You ever sit across from someone you love and feel your entire world split in half with one sentence? It's like hearing a gunshot in a silent room. No warning, no time to brace yourself. Just that cold, ringing silence afterward, where you realize everything's changed. That's how it felt when she said, "I wish you hadn't gotten that vasectomy." 8 words. 8 stupid words that detonated 4 years of my life. I remember blinking, thinking I'd misheard her. The coffee between us had gone cold, the tiny cafe lights flickering off her face. We were supposed to be planning our trip, a simple weekend getaway. Instead, she was talking about children. Children, the one topic we'd agreed on from day one. No kids. No, maybe someday. No, we'll see. Just no. We were both in our late 20s when we met. Her, an artist with that kind of fire that made you want to build her a world to create in. Me, a software guy who had already decided I didn't want to bring anyone into this messy planet. We clicked because we both understood that. She said she wanted to live freely, travel, paint, build something meaningful without being tied down. That was the deal. So when I got the vasectomy last year, it wasn't some impulsive act of rebellion. It was commitment. Commitment to the life we said we wanted. To the promises we made when everything was still easy. But that day, the way she looked at me, not angry, not sad, just regretful. It felt like someone had pulled the ground out from under me. "I just wish you had waited," she said softly. "I've been thinking lately. Maybe I do want a child." Her voice trembled, but my chest felt like it had turned to stone. It wasn't the words themselves. It was what they meant, that somewhere along the line, while I was building our future, she'd been quietly rewriting it. "Thinking lately?" I asked. My tone came out sharper than I intended. "How long is lately, Mia?" She hesitated. "Too long." That hesitation was my answer. I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears. I wasn't angry that she'd changed her mind. People evolve, right? I was angry that she waited, that she let me make a permanent decision believing we were on the same page. When I got the vasectomy, she'd even held my hand in the clinic. I remember her laughing, saying, "At least now we can have fun without worrying." That memory now felt twisted, like a knife turned backward. "I didn't know how to bring it up," she whispered. "I didn't want to hurt you. Hurt me," I repeated. "You let me go through with something irreversible, thinking we were fine, and now you say you want kids." People at the next table were pretending not to listen, but I could feel their eyes. My throat burned, but I didn't care. It felt like I'd been living in a lie, one built on silence. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "I'm allowed to change my mind," she said, her eyes wet. "That doesn't mean I stopped loving you." I wanted to believe her. God, I did, but love isn't always enough. Not when your visions of the future split like that. "You're right," I said quietly. "You're allowed to change your mind, and I'm allowed not to stay." The words came out before I could stop them, but the moment I said them, I knew they were true. Because this wasn't just about a child. It was about trust, about the way someone can hold a truth in their chest for months while you live oblivious, thinking you're both walking the same road. She stared at me, her mouth opening slightly, as if she couldn't believe I'd said that. "Can we at least talk about it in a few days?" she pleaded. "Maybe after we've both cooled down." "No," I said, "because in a few days, you'll just try to talk me into changing my mind. And if you somehow accept that I won't, you'll resent me for it. Either way, it dies." For a long time, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of the cafe door opening and closing as strangers walked in and out of what used to be our little safe place. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor, loud and final. She looked up at me with tears she was trying to hide. I wanted to reach out, to hold her, to fix it, but I couldn't, because deep down, something had already broken beyond repair. So I left. No dramatic goodbye, no looking back, just the sound of my footsteps echoing behind me like the end of a movie I never wanted to be in. 4 years, gone. And all I could think as I drove home was, why does this keep happening to me? My last relationship ended for the exact same reason. 6 months in, she'd changed her mind about kids, and I'd told myself then, never again. Be clear, be honest, find someone who truly wants what you want, and I thought I had until today. Now I'm sitting here, surrounded by memories that suddenly mean nothing, wondering if it's me. If maybe I'm cursed to love people who only think they know what they want. until it's too late. The drive home felt endless that night. Every red light burned longer than usual. Every song on the radio seemed to mock me. Love songs, breakup songs, all of them whispering versions of my own mistake. The city outside my windshield blurred, and I kept thinking about her voice. Soft, trembling, saying she'd been thinking about it for a few months. A few months. That meant while I was with her. While we made dinner, laughed about stupid movies, planned our next trip, she was silently battling a thought that would eventually kill us. I pulled into my apartment parking lot and just sat there, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel, the silence roaring. It's strange. Heartbreak doesn't come like a thunderclap. It's slow, a quiet suffocation that seeps into your bones. I didn't cry. Not then. I just stared into the darkness and thought, what's the point of promises if people can rewrite them whenever it feels convenient? When we first met, Mia and I were unstoppable. We were that couple everyone else secretly hated. Always laughing, always touching, always finishing each other's sentences. We met at a mutual friend's housewarming party. She spilled wine on me, panicked, and then laughed about it so hard that I couldn't even be mad. That laugh became my addiction. She said she liked that I knew what I wanted, that I wasn't like the maybes and somedays she'd dated before. We talked that night about everything. Dreams, fears, regrets. And when I said I didn't want kids, she'd smiled in relief. Thank God, she said. I thought I was the only one who felt that way. That moment is seared into my memory because it's the foundation I built everything on. 4 years later, that foundation just cracked. When I finally walked into my apartment, I saw her stuff, her toothbrush next to mine, her sweater on my couch, her half-empty mug still on the counter from that morning, all those small ghosts of her existence. I should have texted her. I should have said something. But what do you even say when love collides with incompatible dreams? Instead, I opened a beer, sat on the floor and scrolled through our old photos. Us on the beach, us cooking dinner, her painting in my old hoodie. Every smile looked different now, like I was seeing lies hidden in plain sight. Around 2 a.m., she texted, Mia, please don't shut me out like this. Can we at least talk tomorrow? I stared at that message for 5 whole minutes before locking my phone, because I already knew what that talk would be. She'd cry. I'd soften. We'd try to patch it with love that couldn't fix the fracture underneath. But the truth was, I wasn't angry at her for wanting a child. I was angry that she waited until after I made an irreversible choice to tell me, that she didn't trust me enough to handle her doubts when they first started. And deep down, a darker thought began to form. What if she only started wanting kids because everyone around her was having them? Her sister just had a baby. Her best friend was pregnant. She'd been going to baby showers every other month. Maybe it wasn't even her true desire. Maybe it was pressure. That unspoken timer society sets for women, whispering that they're running out of time. I wanted to believe that, because if it wasn't really what she wanted, maybe there was still a chance. But then I remembered her face when she said it, the quiet longing in her eyes. That wasn't social pressure. That was something deeper, something I could never give her. And that's when the grief hit me for real. Not loud, not violent, just a slow collapse. I sat there on the cold floor until morning, staring at the wall, realizing I wasn't just losing her. I was losing the version of myself I'd built around us. We had plans, the tiny apartment we wanted to buy, the Europe trip, the rescue dog we'd been talking about. Every single dream had we in it. Now suddenly, it was just me. The next day, my phone kept lighting up. Missed calls, messages, please pick up, I'm sorry. Can we talk please? I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I didn't trust myself not to cave. By evening, I finally sent a single text. I can't do this anymore, Mia. Not because I hate you, because I love you and that's the problem. Loving you would make me compromise who I am. And that's not love. That's slow self-destruction. I stared at that message before hitting send, my thumb shaking. A minute later, she read it. No reply, just that tiny seen notification. The modern version of heartbreak. Days passed. Her absence grew louder. Her laughter echoed in my head like an old song stuck on repeat. Everywhere I went, Something reminded me of her. The smell of coffee, the color of sunsets, even the sound of paintbrushes scraping in a studio window I passed. And that's when guilt started to creep in. What if I was too harsh? What if love was supposed to be flexible? What if I'd given up too soon? I started rereading her last message. I didn't want to hurt you. What if she really didn't? What if she'd been scared? What if she was just confused? My brain kept spinning until I didn't even know what was real anymore. Then came the moment that changed everything. The one that would turn guilt into something darker. 3 nights later, I got a call from her best friend, Lily. Her voice was shaky. "James, she's not okay," she said. "She's been crying non-stop. She hasn't left her apartment. She told me she thinks you hate her." I froze. Hate her? I could never. But before I could even reply, Lily said something that made my stomach drop. She told me she's been thinking about this since before your surgery. She just didn't know how to tell you because she thought you'd leave her. My world tilted. Before the surgery. That meant she knew. When Lily said those words, "She's been thinking about this since before your surgery," it felt like someone had poured ice water straight down my spine. For a second, I couldn't even speak. I just sat there, gripping my phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. She knew. I finally managed to whisper. There was a pause on the other end, then a soft, hesitant, "Yeah." She told me she started doubting the whole no kids thing a few weeks before you got it done, but she said she didn't want to mess things up between you two. Mess things up. That phrase echoed in my skull like a hammer. So, instead of being honest, she let me walk into that clinic, convinced we were both on the same page, while she was already second-guessing it. I could feel something inside me break. Not anger, not sadness, just this hollow ache. A kind of numb disbelief that someone you love could look you in the eye, smile, and still keep something so crucial buried. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked quietly. Lily sighed. "Because she's falling apart, James. She regrets not saying anything. She keeps blaming herself, and I think you should at least know the full story." I didn't answer. I just hung up. Then I sat there, staring into the dark apartment, surrounded by the ghost of her. The smell of her perfume still faint on the couch, her sweater still draped over my chair. And I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was the only thing I could do to keep from screaming. I'd spent days torturing myself, wondering if I'd been too cold, too rigid. But this was betrayal with a smile. The thing about lies is, they don't always sound like lies. Sometimes they sound like love. "Don't worry, babe. I want the same things you do. Of course I'm sure. I'll always be honest with you. Those words don't rot instantly. They decay slowly, until one day you look back and realize everything was built on half-truths." I got in my car before I could overthink it. My body was moving faster than my brain. By the time I realized what I was doing, I was parked outside her apartment complex. The lights were off, except for the faint orange glow leaking from her window. I could see her silhouette, sitting by the window, motionless. My chest tightened. I didn't know what I was going to say. I just knew I couldn't let this rot inside me any longer. I climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like the whole building could hear it. When I reached her door, I hesitated, my hand hovering over the wood, trembling. Then I knocked. The sound echoed down the hallway. A few seconds later, the lock clicked, and there she was. Eyes red, hair messy, wearing one of my old hoodies. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It was like two ghosts recognizing each other after death. "James," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. No greeting, no softness, just the question that had been burning holes in my mind. She swallowed hard, stepping aside so I could come in. The air inside her apartment smelled like lavender and sadness. Half-finished paintings leaned against the wall. A mug sat untouched on the coffee table. "I didn't know how," she said finally. Her hands were shaking. "You were so sure, James. You'd made up your mind about everything. And I didn't want to lose you." I stared at her. "So instead, you lied by omission. You let me make a permanent decision based on an agreement that you'd already started doubting." Her eyes filled with tears. "I thought maybe it was just a phase," she whispered. "I didn't want to ruin something perfect over a thought I wasn't even sure about." "That's not love, Mia," I said. "That's fear. And fear doesn't protect love. It poisons it. She covered her face with her hands and started to cry. Not the quiet, gentle kind. The kind that shakes your entire body. And for a moment, I hated myself for still caring, for wanting to reach out and hold her even though every rational part of me screamed not to. I was scared, she said between sobs. Everyone around me was changing. My sister had a baby. My mum kept asking when it would be my turn. I felt broken for not wanting it, and then I started wondering if maybe I was lying to myself all along. Her words hit like small knives, because deep down, I understood. That kind of societal guilt. That whisper that says you're missing something essential if you don't follow the pattern. But understanding doesn't undo betrayal, so instead of being honest with me, I said, my voice cracking, you let me take the knife to my own future. She looked up, her eyes wide, glistening. I didn't mean to, James, I swear. I thought I'd figure it out before you went through with it. Figure it out? I repeated bitterly. Like it was some kind of experiment? You played Russian roulette with our future, Mia. Silence filled the room. Heavy, suffocating. Then she whispered, I'm sorry. 2 words, useless, fragile, and too late. I looked at her for a long moment. Every memory we had together flashed before my eyes. The laughter, the trips, the nights we stayed up talking about everything. And I realized something brutal. This wasn't a story about villains and victims. It was just 2 people who wanted different things, but one of them was too scared to admit it. I don't hate you, I said finally, but I can't love you the same way anymore. Her face crumpled, like she'd been holding her breath for years and finally exhaled. I turned toward the door. My hand was on the handle when she said softly, Do you think there's any way back from this? I paused, looked over my shoulder. Not this time, I said, because love can survive almost anything, except dishonesty. And then I left. Again. Only this time, I knew it was really over. As I stepped outside, the night air hit me like a slap. Cold, real, final. I didn't cry. Not yet. But something deep inside me went quiet, like a light being turned off. And that's when it truly sank in. It wasn't that she wanted a child. It was that she waited until after I'd made a choice I couldn't undo. She didn't just change her mind. She changed my future without telling me, and I don't think I'll ever forgive that. You know what's strange? After all that yelling, crying, all those words that cut deeper than they were meant to, when it finally ends, it's quiet, almost eerily quiet. The kind of silence that makes you realize heartbreak isn't just loud sobs or shattered glass. It's the echo of your own, breathing in an empty room. The night after I left her place, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I did the right thing. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. That look on her face when I said there was no way back. It's the kind of look that sticks to your conscience. I kept replaying everything in my head, like a movie on loop. Every conversation, every laugh, every little sign I might have missed. Had she dropped hints? Did I just not want to see them? The human mind is cruel like that. It doesn't just break the memory. It keeps twisting it until you start doubting what was ever real. By the 3rd day, I deleted her number, blocked her social media, not out of anger, out of survival. Because seeing her name, her face, even her handwriting, it all hurt like hell. But the thing about digital disconnection is, it doesn't delete the ghosts. She was still in my Spotify playlists, in my photos, in the smell of my hoodie that I couldn't bring myself to wash. I'd wake up, instinctively reach for my phone to text her good morning, only to stop mid-motion and feel that hollow punch in my stomach. That's when the guilt started crawling in. Not about leaving, but about how easily I could have become her reason for self-hatred, because she wasn't evil. She was just human, scared, confused, pressured. And I walked away. Part of me admired her courage for admitting what she wanted, but another part couldn't stop screaming. Why now? Why not before? Why wait until the damage was irreversible? For a week, I avoided everyone. Friends texted, called. I ignored them all. It wasn't that I didn't want to talk. It's that I didn't know how to talk about it without sounding bitter or broken. I went through the motions of life, work, gym, food, all mechanical. Like my body was moving on autopilot while my mind was still standing in that cafe. Frozen in the moment, she said, "I wish you hadn't gotten that vasectomy." It's funny. That line kept replaying in my head like a bad song I couldn't turn off. Some nights, I'd find myself standing in the bathroom, staring at the faint scar, a reminder of the choice that was supposed to give me peace, now turned into a symbol of everything I lost. One night, around 3 a.m., I finally cracked. I grabbed my phone, opened a blank note, and started writing. Not to her, to myself. You did what you had to do. You didn't walk away because you stopped loving her. You walked away because you refused to live with quiet resentment. Hers, or yours. Sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about not letting it rot. I must have read that note 50 times, but even then, it didn't feel like comfort. It felt like survival. A few days later, I bumped into Lily again at a grocery store. She looked tired, the kind of tired that only comes from being caught in the crossfire of two people's heartbreak. She gave me a sad smile. "She's trying to move on, you know." "Painting again," I nodded. "Good." It was the only word I could manage. She hesitated. "She wanted me to tell you something." I froze, my hand tightening around the shopping cart handle. "What?" "She said she doesn't blame you, that she understands why you left, and she hopes one day you'll forgive her." Forgive her? The word felt heavy. Too soon. Too raw. I wanted to say I already had, but that would have been a lie. Forgiveness is easy to say, hard to feel. Instead, I just nodded and walked away. But for the rest of the day, her words lingered in my head. That night, I sat by the window with a drink in my hand, watching the city lights blur through the glass, and for the first time, I wondered, am I the problem? Both my last relationships ended the same way. Both times, I'd made sure to be clear about not wanting kids. Both times, they changed their minds. What are the odds? Was I somehow drawn to women who wanted to fix me? Or was I subconsciously chasing people I knew wouldn't stay, so I wouldn't have to risk changing my own mind someday? The thought scared me more than I'd like to admit, because maybe, just maybe, it wasn't just bad luck. Maybe it was me. Maybe I was so obsessed with control, with certainty, with never being surprised, that I forgot people aren't contracts. They're variables. But still, I couldn't regret my decision, because love built on forced compromise always ends in resentment. I'd seen it with my parents. Years of quiet hostility disguised as staying together for stability. I'd promised myself I'd never live that way. So even as guilt chewed at me, I knew I made the only choice I could. Still, some nights I'd dream of her. Not the version crying in her apartment, but the one who spilled wine on me the night we met. The one who laughed until her eyes closed. The one who looked at me like I was the safest place in the world. And when I'd wake up, that emptiness beside me would remind me of what I'd lost. Not just her, but the idea that love alone could be enough. It's strange how time moves differently after heartbreak. Days stretch into weeks, weeks blur into months, and yet somehow, you're still stuck in the same emotional loop. Wake up, work, eat, pretend you're fine, go to bed, repeat. That was my life for the next 3 months. I didn't go on dates, didn't talk about it, didn't even tell my closest friends what really happened. Because how do you explain to someone that you're mourning a person who's still alive, just living a different version of life you can't be part of anymore? Work became my distraction. I'd throw myself into projects, take on extra shifts, even volunteer for boring tasks, anything to keep my mind occupied. But every now and then, I'd see a dad pushing a stroller, or a family laughing together at the park, and something inside me would twist. Not jealousy, but a kind of quiet grief. Grief for a life I never wanted, yet still lost. One evening, after another long day, I stopped by this small bar near my apartment, the kind of place where nobody knows your name. And that's exactly what you want. I sat at the counter, ordered a whiskey, and tried not to think. That's when I heard it. That laugh. That same, distinct laugh that used to pull me out of every bad mood. For a split second, my brain refused to believe it. I turned, and there she was. Mia, sitting a few tables away, surrounded by friends. Her hair was shorter now, lighter, like she'd cut off the past along with the split ends. She was smiling, really smiling. I should have looked away, should have paid my tab and left. But I couldn't move. She hadn't seen me yet. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't before. I wasn't angry anymore. just sad. Because seeing her happy, laughing again, it felt both like closure and punishment. After a few minutes, she noticed me. Her smile faltered for a heartbeat, then softened into something complicated: recognition, surprise, maybe even guilt. She excused herself from her group and walked toward me. Every step made my chest tighten. "Hey," she said softly, almost awkwardly. "Hey," I replied, my voice lower than I expected. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled faintly. "Didn't think I'd run into you here." "Yeah, me neither." I tried to sound casual, but the tension hung between us like thick fog. She sat on the stool next to mine, not too close, not too far. It was strange, familiar and foreign at the same time. "I heard you've been doing well," she said. "Lily mentioned you've been focusing on work." "Yeah, trying to keep busy." I took a slow sip of whiskey. "You?" she hesitated. "I'm good. Painting again. Trying to figure things out," I nodded. "That's good." Another pause. The kind that isn't awkward, just heavy. Finally, she whispered, "I miss you sometimes." I froze. There it was, the line that instantly cracked the armor I'd spent months building. "I miss you too," I admitted quietly. The words slipped out before I could stop them. She looked down at her hands. "I know I can't take back what I did, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I just wanted you to know I never meant to hurt you. I was scared. I thought I'd lose you if I told you." "You did anyway," I said softly. Her eyes glistened. "I know." Silence again. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. She slid it across the counter toward me. "What's this?" "Just something I painted," she said. "You don't have to open it now." I wanted to refuse it, to tell her that memories were enough. But my hand moved on its own. I took it. We sat there for another minute, both pretending this was casual when it wasn't. Then she stood up. "Take care of yourself." "James," she said. "You too," I replied. And just like that, she was gone. I sat there for a long time after she left, staring at the envelope. Finally, I opened it. Inside was a small canvas print, a painting of two silhouettes walking in opposite directions, their shadows still touching in the middle. At the bottom, in small handwriting, it said, "Some love stories don't end. They just change form." I didn't know whether to cry or laugh, because in that moment I realized she wasn't the villain. And maybe neither was I. We were just two people who met at the wrong intersection of life, both sure of what we wanted, until one of us wasn't. Walked home that night feeling something I hadn't felt in months: peace, not happiness. Not closure, just peace. But peace has a way of pulling up old questions you thought you'd buried. And as I placed the painting on my desk, one question echoed louder than the rest. What if love isn't about finding someone who wants the same future, but about accepting when they don't? They say heartbreak teaches you lessons you never asked to learn, but no one tells you how slow healing really is. How it doesn't come with closure or clarity, but in small, painful fragments. It's been a year since that night at the bar, a year since I saw her, since I opened that envelope, since I realized that endings don't always mean failure. I still keep the painting on my desk, not as a symbol of pain, but as a reminder of how fragile human promises can be. We promise forever as if it's something we can control, but forever changes when people do. There are days when I still wake up reaching for her, my hand brushing against the cold side of the bed before my brain catches up to reality. And every time, that realization hits with the same quiet sting. She's not mine anymore. Maybe she never really was. I thought love was about finding someone whose vision of the future perfectly aligned with yours. But now I think it's about having the courage to walk away when it doesn't. Even when every part of you is begging to stay. The truth is, when she told me she wanted a child, something inside me broke. Not because I hated the idea of kids, but because for 4 years, I'd built my sense of peace on a shared promise, one that was suddenly gone. It felt like standing in a house I thought we'd built together, only to realize one of us had quietly started packing boxes months ago. And that's what betrayal really is, isn't it? Not the lie itself, but the moment you realize someone stopped being honest long before you knew it. For a long time, I blamed her. Then I blamed myself. Then eventually, I stopped blaming anyone, because love isn't static. It moves, it evolves, it demands. Sometimes it demands things you can't give, and sometimes it outgrows the version of you that once fit perfectly. One night, I remember sitting on my balcony, watching the city lights blur like falling stars. I asked myself, what if she was right? What if people are supposed to change their minds? And the scarier question, what if I was right too? Two truths existing at the same time, neither wrong, just incompatible. That realization hit harder than any breakup, because it meant love could be real and still not enough. I started journaling after that, not because I'm some poetic guy, but because I needed to get the noise out of my head. Each page became a confession, not to her, but to myself, about how I missed her laugh, about how I envied people who could compromise, about how I secretly wondered if getting the vasectomy was me trying to control something I didn't trust life to handle. Some nights, I'd look at the mirror and whisper, was I the villain? Because maybe I was. Maybe cutting things off so fast wasn't strength. Maybe it was fear wearing armor. But then again, what was the alternative? Stay and pretend it didn't hurt every time she talked about a future I'd already closed the door on? Watch resentment rot everything we once had? No. Walking away was the kindest thing I could do for both of us. And yet even now, there's a part of me that wonders, if she ever has that child she dreamed of, will she think of me? Not with anger, not with regret, just with the quiet acknowledgement of what we were. Sometimes I imagine her years from now, sitting in a park, a small child laughing beside her, sunlight catching her hair, and I hope, wherever I am, that I'll feel a soft kind of peace in that moment. Because even if I couldn't give her that life, I gave her honesty, and maybe that's love too. The kind that doesn't end in happily ever after, but still leaves something good behind. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. We can't control how others change. We can only control whether we cling to who they were or let them go to become who they're meant to be. So, if you're listening to this and you've ever lost someone because your futures didn't align, don't call it wasted time. 4 years weren't wasted for me. They were lived. They were real, and sometimes that's all love is meant to be, because not every love story is meant to last forever. Some are meant to teach you how to finally choose yourself. If you were in my place, if the person you loved suddenly wanted a life you never agreed to, would you stay and try to bend, or would you walk away before you both broke completely? Comment below, because I still don't know if I made the right choice. Soft rain sound fades in. The screen slowly transitions to city lights reflecting on wet pavement. My voice, low, tired, honest, cuts through the silence. You know what no one tells you about love? That it's not destroyed by lies. It's destroyed by truths that come too late. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't losing someone. It's realizing you were both right, but right in ways that could never coexist. I used to think love was about finding your missing half. But maybe love is just two complete people, standing side by side until one of them decides to walk a different path. And the hardest part, you don't get to hate them for it. You just stand there, watching their shadow get smaller in the distance, until the silence becomes bearable again. Pause. The sound of wind rustling through trees. There are still nights when I dream of her. Not the way things ended, but the small, stupid moments. The way she used to steal my fries, the way her laughter would fill every corner of my apartment, the way her eyes softened whenever I said something I didn't mean to. And every time, I wake up with that same ache in my chest, the kind that doesn't scream anymore, just hums quietly, like background noise. Maybe that's what healing really is, not forgetting, just learning to carry the weight differently. Sometimes I catch myself wondering, what if I hadn't done the vasectomy yet? What if I had waited, or listened, or tried harder to understand? Would it have changed anything? Maybe. Maybe not. But I've learned that maybes are the ghosts of relationships. They haunt you, whispering what-ifs that never go away. So I made a choice, to stop chasing closure and start building peace instead. I started hiking again, started cooking meals that only serve one, but taste just as good. Started sitting on my balcony at night, watching the city breathe and realizing I'm still here, and that counts for something. Because maybe life isn't about finding the person who completes you. It's about surviving the ones who almost did. Soft instrumental piano begins. I still believe in love, not the fairy tale kind, but the real one, the kind that's messy, complicated, temporary, and still worth every second. So if you're sitting there tonight, replaying old conversations, rereading texts, or wondering if you made the right choice, let me tell you something. You did what you had to do with the heart you had at the time, and that's enough. Music swells, faint, heartbeat rhythm underneath. Sometimes love doesn't need a happy ending. Sometimes it just needs a beautiful goodbye. Pause, voice softens. Because in the end, we don't always lose people because they stopped loving us. We lose them because they started loving themselves differently. The rain fades. The screen turns black. If you've ever had to let go of someone because your dreams didn't match, tell me in the comments below. Did you walk away too soon or just in time? Soft outro music fades in. Screen text appears. Subscribe for more true cinematic confessions. Every story leaves a scar, but every scar tells the truth. Sometimes, love doesn't end with a fight. It ends quietly, in a look, in a sigh. In the moment, two hearts realize they're not walking the same direction anymore. Cut to a slow-motion shot. A man closing the door of an apartment. The echo lingers longer than it should. We talk about forever like it's something we can promise. But forever is fragile. It shifts, it bends, and sometimes it simply runs out of breath. Visual. Rain streaking down a window, a coffee mug half full, a photograph face down on a desk. And maybe that's okay, because not every love is meant to last a lifetime. Some are meant to wake you up. Some are meant to break you open, so you can finally see yourself clearly. Again, music rises, gentle cinematic strings, visuals of city lights at night, traffic blurring into rivers of gold. I used to think endings meant failure. Now, I think they mean freedom. Freedom to remember without pain. Freedom to miss without wanting back. Freedom to love again, differently, softly, wiser. Cut to the man walking through a quiet park at dawn, light mist in the air. Birds begin to stir. In the end, I learned that love isn't about who stays the longest. It's about who teaches you the most about yourself while they're here. She taught me that people are allowed to change, and I taught myself that I don't have to. The camera pans up, sunlight breaking through clouds. So if you're standing at the edge of a love that's fading, don't beg it to stay. Let it leave. Let it become something else. Memory, lesson, art, peace. The man places the small painting, the one from Mia, on a shelf. He smiles faintly, because even the people who leave something beautiful behind. Pause, a deep breath, and maybe that's enough. Soft piano melody fades into silence. Screen fades to black. White text appears. To those who let go without hating, to those who loved honestly, even when it ended, you didn't lose, you lived.